It's Friday, June 18th, 2021, and this is the Washington Times front page. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. The Supreme Court has upheld the Affordable Care Act after a group of Republican-led states challenged its legality, keeping health care coverage intact for more than 30 million Americans. Legal Affairs reporter Alex Royer reports in a 7-2 ruling, the High Court said the states, led by Texas, did not show sufficient injury to strike down any part of the health care law. Republicans have tried repeatedly and unsuccessfully to repeal the law, known as Obamacare, since 2012, when the court led by Chief Justice John Roberts upheld its individual mandate as a tax to prod healthy people to sign up for health insurance. The court didn't indicate whether eliminating the tax, which the Republican-led Congress did in 2017, invalidated the law altogether. Instead, the justices found that by setting the penalty at $0, the states and plaintiffs are not harmed, and therefore don't have the standing to sue. Staying with the court, Alex also has the story of a unanimous ruling that the city of Philadelphia violated Catholic Social Services' First Amendment rights by forcing the agency to place children with same-sex couples despite the organization's religious beliefs. Although no same-sex couple ever came to Catholic Social Services, a newspaper article about the policy inspired Philadelphia City Council to examine whether the group ran afoul of non-discrimination laws. Catholic Social Services brought the case to the Supreme Court after losing in lower courts. The agency says it's allowed to reject certain couples from fostering children based on its religious and First Amendment rights. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the majority, said Philadelphia's non-discrimination requirement imposed a burden on CSS's religious exercise and doesn't qualify as a generally applicable law. At the Pentagon, top officials are warning that Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan could regenerate and plot terrorist attacks against the American homeland within 2 years if the insurgent Taliban overwhelm a fragile U.S.-backed government and take control of the country. Pentagon correspondent Ben Wolfgang reports Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley outlined the worst-case scenario, as all American forces are expected to be out of the country within several months, except for a small contingent of Marines tasked with guarding the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. With mounting evidence that the Taliban have maintained close ties with al-Qaeda, a collapse of the Afghan government and subsequent Taliban takeover could produce a country that's ground zero for global Islamic terrorism, just as it was in the years leading up to the September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States. National security scholars and foreign policy analysts say it appears unlikely that al-Qaeda will ever have free reign in Afghanistan the same way it did 20 years ago. Still, U.S. military leaders say the threat must be taken seriously. A reminder that you can find all these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. Don't have access to the Times yet? It'll cost you less than a latte a month. Visit WashingtonTimes.com/George and get 25% off your annual subscription. President Biden came out of the starting blocks with the most sweeping agenda of any recent administration, and he's drawing ferocious resistance to it in federal courts where his opponents are filing lawsuits. Stephen Diner reports most of the cases are in their infancy, but the president has already encountered some serious setbacks. Among those, a federal appeals court late last month shot down an attempt to create a racial preference for distributing coronavirus relief funds to struggling restaurants. The court ruled giving racial and ethnic minorities an early window to apply for aid from the $29 billion fund was unconstitutional. And this week, a judge slapped an injunction on the administration's attempt to pause new oil and gas lease sales on federal lands. The Republican Attorneys General Association said its members brought 22 lawsuits against the Biden administration during its first 4 months. At the same point in the Trump administration, Democratic attorneys general had brought just 5 lawsuits. And finally, welcome to the early jockeying among the potential 2024 presidential contenders, even though the election's still 3 years away. Politics reporter Seth MacLachlan reports the early underdogs are searching for street credibility among voters by rushing to lift candidates across the country through their endorsements, public appearances, and fundraising events. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul is headed to Cleveland this weekend to throw his support behind Mike Gibbons' bid for the competitive Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate seat that's being vacated by Rob Portman. Former UN Ambassador and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley will go to Iowa next week to deliver the keynote address at the state GOP's biggest fundraiser of the year, and former Vice President Mike Pence will visit the Hawkeye State as well next month to lend his hand in the fight for control of the House. Find all today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and subscribe for free to the front page. Just search Washington Times on your favorite podcast platforms. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.